I'm Mo, and this month it is Nonfiction November. I am new to Booktube, and I really wanted to participate in Nonfiction November because I always feel like I don't read enough nonfiction. I usually read books to, kind of change my mindset, get out of reality. So Nonfiction November seemed very intimidating to me because it seemed all about being in reality. A lot of the nonfiction books I read are very informative, very instructional, books about gardening, books about time management, books about life, books about things like that. The nonfiction that I see on Booktube mostly is like about racism, about race, about injustice, which is great, but to me that seems very heavy. So when I first started thinking about Nonfiction November, I was like, oh, am I going to read like all these really heavy books? And I'm probably not going to. No, I'm probably going to read books, the same kind of nonfiction books that I already read. I eventually want to read those books, but I have to be in a really specific mindset to read those heavy books. I wanted to come on here for those who maybe are also a little intimidated by Nonfiction November and just talk about 5 of my favorite nonfiction books. So we'll start with Please Kill Me by Legs McNeil and Gillian McCain. It's called Please Kill Me, The Uncensored Oral History of Punk, and it is an oral history of the punk rock scene from the 70s to the 90s. I'm really into punk rock, so I definitely picked this up so that I could see some of my favorite bands and some of my favorite players and kind of read about the experience through people who were actually there. This book is made up of interviews and both taken at the time and taken later. It has a huge list of characters, but I found this one to be really digestible. It's quite long. Some of the other oral histories I've read are longer and have more players in them and are harder to kind of distinguish who's talking and what's going on, but I found this one really easy to get through and really interesting. It could be because I like punk rock so much, so I already know a lot of the people. I recently read Everybody Loves Our Town, which is a similar oral history of the grunge scene in the 90s, and that one was a little bit more difficult for me because that's not a music scene I'm as familiar with. If you like music, if you like punk music, I would definitely suggest picking up some of these oral histories for a great nonfiction book. Another nonfiction book that I love is Mark Kurlansky's The Big Oyster. I've read a couple of Mark Kurlansky's books before, and what I find really interesting is, although this is a history of the oyster and how it was eaten and how it was thought of and revered and how it came to be this very special dish in American culture, this book is also the history of the Manhattan estuary and how in the early Americas the oysters were so prevalent and people ate them all the time, ate them in huge quantities. A neat thing about this book is that it has a lot of recipes of different oyster dishes throughout history, so it's really cool to see the different ways that people ate oysters throughout history in the Americas. I also really love that this book is about Manhattan and the Manhattan estuary and kind of the birth of Manhattan in the Americas and the birth of New York and the birth of trade through that port and that city. And obviously, having lived in Brooklyn for 15 years, I love imagining how Brooklyn and Manhattan and the 5 boroughs were so long ago. I think that this book is really interesting environmentally as well because the decline in oysters from only a few hundred years ago to now is intense, and the environmental impact that developing the Manhattan estuary has had is so shocking, and it took so little time. It's really, really interesting read. Out of Mark Kurlansky's books, this one's definitely my favorite, a great nonfiction read. Moving on to sort of more of a memoir style, I love Travels with Charley by John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck, obviously an American classic writer, did amazing works of fiction based around the Americas. This book was written in the 60s, and he's decided that he's out of touch with what's going on with America. So he builds a tiny house on wheels, a truck house, and he takes his standard poodle, Charley, and he travels across the country just kind of observing and hanging out with people and really coming back to his roots of how he viewed America and what America is like now, and reconnects with a way to write about America. I love this book because I love to travel in America. I think it's really interesting that traveling around America is this weird mix of like everything's the same, everything's comfortable, and everything has its own personality. You're going to learn something everywhere you go. So I really love Travels with Charley by John Steinbeck. Another memoir-ish book is Never Cry Wolfe by Fairleigh Mowat. This is a great book about Fairleigh Mowat in the late 40s. He gets enlisted by the Wildlife Service of Canada to find out why the caribou population is declining and if it has to do with the wolves that people have seen there. He goes out and sets up tent. He's totally isolated. The plane that brings him supplies only comes in every couple of months, and he essentially just puts up a tent and lives with wolves for, I think it was 2 years. This is a really fascinating book because although it has to do with the environmental impact on caribou, what he ends up really discovering is the environmental impact on the wolves and the wolves' habitat, and how the population of these rural and wild places are not only destroying the wolves, but are destroying the caribou and are destroying all these different habitats of different animals. So this is a good one. Again, very funny, but also very poignant and very relevant to today's overpopulation of humans and how we encroach on the habitats of different wild animals. The last book I have to talk about also doesn't have a cover, but it is The Professor and the Madman, which is the story of how the Oxford English Dictionary was written. And it is so interesting. I think I've only read this one like twice, but it's really stuck with me over time, and I just think it's amazing how the dictionary was written in the first place. Like, who ever thinks of how a dictionary is written? I don't know. This story follows that dictionary being written, and also one of its main contributors who happens to be in a mental institute. This book kind of follows how the two creators worked together but separately, and when they met, it has these two parallel storylines. I like this book a lot. They recently made a movie of it, I think starring Mel Gibson, and it got totally panned. Apparently it was horrible, but I definitely want to see it because it is a really interesting historical time. They also made a movie of Never Cry Wolfe, which is so good. It was made in the 80s. It's like a Disney movie. It's one of those Disney movies that's like live action. So funny. I would definitely recommend the movie of this. There were some aspects of the book that I didn't like. Although it is a nonfiction, there are some passages that are written as if the author knew what the characters were thinking, what the main players were thinking, and obviously they didn't know that. That kind of was a little bit rough for me, like those aspects were, but overall, for being such a short book, it has so much information in it, and it's just a really fascinating story and a really fascinating read. So I would definitely suggest The Professor and the Madman for Nonfiction November. So those are 5 nonfiction books that I highly recommend, and I think there's a little bit of something for everyone in there. These are all pretty easy to read. They're all dealing with important subject matter or interesting subject matter, but not too heavy, not too hard to digest. And I think that if you're feeling intimidated by Nonfiction November, any one of these would be a good one to pick up and give a try. So I hope that you do really good in Nonfiction November. I hope that this helps you get into nonfiction. I'm excited to see everyone's nonfiction wrap-ups at the end of the month. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.